Ted Brooks, we've been hearing from both presidential candidates about the nation's so-called crumbling infrastructure. So tell me the truth, without hyperbole, how bad is it?
You know, Greg, it's pretty bad. There's about, according to several estimates out there, the most reputable probably being the American Society of Civil Engineers, America gets a D+ grade on its report card for infrastructure. And the estimate is that over the next 10 or so years, that if left uncorrected, that will result in about a $3.5 trillion drag on GDP and the loss of about 2.5 million jobs. So it's a real issue in the U.S.
And there are real opportunities there for investors. So how is CenterSquare approaching these opportunities?
Yeah, so at CenterSquare we look at this both domestically and internationally, and what we try to find is companies that are taking advantage of these pushes, the policy push, the places where we can invest in infrastructure, the places where we recognize that there's a need and where it's already being met, and there's a lot of it. I mean, there's literally trillions of dollars of investment that are being made both in the U.S. and abroad in utilities and transportation, in areas like this. And for an equity investor, the opportunity to invest in something with an above average bond yield, with long-term stable cash flows, with long duration contracts and limited commodity risk across a business cycle, we think is very attractive.
And one secular trend you're looking at in the space is renewable energy growth. Now, is this the place investors should really be? Because in the last 2 years, a lot of those solar stocks have gotten killed.
Yeah, it is. I think, so again, what we try to do at CenterSquare is we distinguish between the equipment manufacturers and the downstream beneficiaries of the policy trend. And in the case of this, we're talking about largely these, we're talking about principally utilities that are the constructors and the operators of wind and solar facilities that are benefiting from state and federal mandates to increase the amount of renewable penetration on the country's electric grid. That trend is not going away. We may get some timing dips, which is going to affect the construction guys and the manufacturers more than the utilities, but the companies that are actually putting into place the assets and operating them, they're going to benefit.
Can you talk a little bit more about the grid? Because we always hear that the grid is tenuous, the grid is shaky. And I thought, frankly, because of this heat dome that we experienced here over the course of the summer, that we were going to get more blackouts and brownouts. It actually held up fairly well. What's wrong with the grid, and where do you see investors making money off it?
Yeah, I think the demise of the grid has been greatly exaggerated. But I do think over, let's say, a secular kind of a basis, let's say over a generation or so, the nature of the relationship between some of these infrastructure companies and their customers is changing. And the companies that can be at the forefront of that, either because it's being mandated by their states or because they've got management teams that are looking to take a little bit of technology risk and invest in a forward-thinking kind of a way, are going to benefit from that. Storage is happening. The increase in distributed generation and people having solar panels on their roofs and relying less on grid and central station power, that's not a trend that's going to reverse anytime soon. And so what we try to do at CenterSquare is find the companies that recognize that trend now and are investing in them early.
All right, and then finally, what about the airports and roads? This is the other two big pieces of the puzzle. People keep talking about LaGuardia being a third world airport. I know there's a lot of delays there, especially when you get caught in traffic. How do you take advantage of those opportunities?
Yeah, so here it's an opportunity that's more global than it is in the United States. You've got a lot of privatized toll roads in Latin America, in Europe, in Australia. The same thing with airports. And these, when I say privatized, we're not talking about they've been sold. They've been leased to a concessionaire on a long-term basis to operate them. And so what ends up happening is the entity doing that benefits by getting cash in the door up front from the lessee, and they don't have to make ongoing capital investments during the term of the lease. The offset for the investors like us is we're talking again about, in some cases, 30, 40, 50-year lease terms with fairly stable cash flows that have a lot of defensive characteristics that we think are very, very attractive.
All right, well, thanks a lot for coming on and talking about it.
Thanks, appreciate it.
And thank you for watching The Street.